Alright, back to this. The so-called Biafra of the rebels is not a homogeneous tribal state. As I have said, 5 out of its 12 million inhabitants are not Igbos. They are Ibibios, Efiks, Ekois, and Ijos. Rebel leaders argue that they all support Biafra. Then why the mass intimidation and brutality conducted by the Ojukwu regime against them, all to no avail? At the recent Kampala peace talks, Dr. A.H.M from Calabar, a retired senior medical officer in the employment of the former Eastern Nigerian government, who is well known to the other side, gave a resume of rebel atrocities in the southeastern states in the following words. Please adjust your seats. We're about to adjust your seat belts. We're about to go on a very, very fantastic ride. But before we go on that ride, let me quickly say this. Southeastern state is not southeastern region. I know I say it every time. It's because new people come in and they may not have heard me say it before. Southeastern state is not southeastern region. Southeastern state is present-day Cross River and Akwa Ibom states. Southeastern region is the 5 states that are Igbo states. Well, majority Igbos, because there are other ethnic groups in those 5 states who are not Igbos, but they are majority Igbo states. So when you see southeastern states here, he's talking about the former Calabar and Ogoja provinces. So that would be Akwa Ibom and Cross River states. So here is a full resume of the rebel atrocities in the southeastern states is what we're about to read from Dr. A.H.M from Calabar. Are you ready? Let's go. It was clear to all right-thinking people that these people, the minorities, wanted to remain within the Federation of Nigeria, but with states of their own in which they enjoyed the right of self-determination. This did not suit the Igbos of the newly declared Republic of Biafra, and so they were determined either to force the 5 million non-Igbos into their republic or to exterminate them systematically. Igbo soldiers were quickly sent to all non-Igbo areas with instructions to keep down the people, detain or even kill all who dared raise a voice in protest against the idea of Biafra. The provincial secretary for Calabar, an Igbo man, called a mass meeting in June 1967 and addressed the Calabar people thus, and I quote, You Calabar people say you want a state of your own. Let me tell you, by the time the federal troops come here to enforce this mad idea, there will be no one left but grass and weeds, for we shall have flattened your land and killed all you Efiks. From then on, the non-Igbos of the eastern region were subjected to torture, detention, all forms of human indignities, and even killing. In Asang, a town in Enyon division, where I come from, and which is just a mile from Ojukwu, my own village, all the inhabitants, numbering about 400, were carried away to an unknown destination. 2 women, one a relation of mine who had been bedridden for 2 years, were slaughtered in cold blood, because the soldiers said it would be a burden to carry them along, and they were under instructions not to leave alive any person in the town. On the way out, a woman gave birth to a babe, Ade, and was groaning in her travail. The soldiers bundled her out of the canoe which was taking them away, shot both mother and the innocent child, only a few minutes old. In Atanonoyo, another town in Enoy division, the whole town was burned down together with all the people the Igbo soldiers could lay hands on. An uncle of mine was killed together with his wife and 4 of 5 children. The only surviving child is a girl of 10 years, her right arm severed, who now lives to tell the tale of how they were all lined up by the riverbank and shot. Luckily for her, she did not die and is being cared for by me now. In Ikorekweyong, 3 miles from my hometown, the Igbo soldiers rang the church bell one Sunday afternoon and forced everybody in the village at gunpoint to assemble in the church building for a special prayer for the survival of the so-called Biafra. When all were assembled, the Igbo soldiers surrounded the church, set it on fire, burning down the villagers and shooting those who tried to escape. It is estimated that more than 300 men, women and children were massacred in and around that church that day. At Ikoropot, 2 wells were filled with the bodies of men, women and children, all thrown in there by Igbo soldiers to die. In Idro, a village 4 miles from my village, the menfolk were forced to dig 3 large pits, each 7 feet deep. All the men and women were tied hand and foot and thrown into them. Children were dumped in with their parents. 5 men were left to cover each pit with earth. When this task was done, the men were themselves all shot dead and their bodies placed on the mounds. I saw these bodies and the mounds myself when I arrived there 3 days after the gruesome and inhuman incident. On the day federal troops landed in Calabar, that was 18th October 1967, there were 169 civilians in detention by so-called Biafran soldiers in the Calabar Army Barracks. They were all lined up and shot dead by Igbo soldiers. Those dead include Mr. F. Spats, ex-member for Calabar in the Nigerian Parliament, and Mr. Ekpeyong, a senior lecturer in Nsukka University, well known to Professor Ojukwu. Even as I speak, these acts of genocide are still being carried on by the Igbos in minority areas still under their occupation. When they were being chased out of Port Harcourt, the so-called Biafran soldiers killed off almost all the Rivers people they could lay hand on. In accordance with instruction from their high command, the killings continue now in the riverine areas not yet under federal control. Recently, similar stories of atrocities in the minority areas have been told by other prominent Nigerians from the southeastern and river states, including Chief Holmes and Dr. Graham Douglas, former Attorney General of the former Eastern Region military government under General Ojukwu. The war to crush the rebellion is not a tribal war against Igbos. Even secessionist leaders concede that the concept of an Igbo apartheid state or Igbo-stan is untenable. If the federal government were to consider an independent state embracing only Igbo land, that state would not be viable, and the secessionist leaders would not accept it. Consequently, the talk of Biafra, embracing all of the former Eastern region because of the agricultural wealth and the quote-unquote empty lands of the southeastern state and the oil of the river state against southeastern states. I'm sorry, I'll repeat it again. That southeastern state is Cross River and Akwa Ibom. They're the ones that have the land, not Eastern region of today. If the federal government were to consider an independent state embracing only Igbo land, that state would not be viable and the secessionist leaders would not accept it. Consequently, the talk of Biafra embracing all of the former Eastern region because of the agricultural wealth and the empty lands of the southeastern states and the oil of the river state, and because of access to the sea. It is, however, to be noted that 8 of the 12 states of Nigeria, with 80% of its population, have no seaports. The East Central states, talking about the southeast of today, is therefore not unique in having no seaport within its boundaries. This is why people will still be telling you that they don't have seaport in 2025. They've been crying that cry. There's no way you're going to have a seaport where there's no sea. And you're not the only ones who have no seaport. The East Central state is therefore not unique in having no seaport within its boundaries. Secessionist leaders also advance the argument that the so-called Biafra can be sovereign but have a customs union, common currency, common services including railways, posts and telecommunications, ports, dual citizenship, and extensive economic relations with Nigeria. How is this different from what these clowns are banding about now? I'll be in Biafra, but I'll be in Nigeria because after all, I say I have business, but I'm in Biafra, but I must be able to be here.